If you remove the phone in the classrooms, it is significantly better when it comes to focus and attention. Like nicotine is so highly addictive, and especially with teenage brains, like they're still growing. Chronic absenteeism has been an ongoing issue that I've faced every single year of my school. By the way, if you're watching, I just wanted to let you know that I have an online teacher apparel store called teacherswish.com. I design and I make all of these teacher shirts where it's comfy, it's wearable, and it's really cute for teachers all around. Thank you for your support. I'll see you next time. Welcome back to another episode of Teachers Wish Podcast, where we talk about spicy trends in today's world of teaching.
We're going to go ahead and get started. So very first off, I'm going to read this article off to you. These are the 2024 findings on youth use for all tobacco products, and this is for all students that are in schools today. So apparently 8.1% of students, or 2.25 million of all students, reported current use of tobacco products. So the number one most commonly used tobacco product is e-cigarettes, and the number two most commonly used tobacco product is nicotine pouches, and then number three is cigarettes. And when I read this is kind of crazy to me because I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, e-cigarettes and nicotine pouches didn't exist. But it's kind of crazy to me to see that now e-cigarettes and nicotine pouches are becoming, I don't even know what nicotine pouches are. I think those are like the Zins.
Right. I did not know what nicotine pouches were either. I just looked it up right now. I didn't even know what Zin was.
Yeah.
But apparently it's like, what was that thing? Chewing tobacco, but
Well,
you put
yeah.
it in your gums?
You just put it up in your, I've seen like some TikToks or stuff where like people put it in like their gum and they just leave it there, right? And then it's
Right.
supposed to just your
Yeah,
saliva.
it gives you like a short little buzz, but it gets you that like little boost of energy, and it's kind of like smoking a cigarette, I guess.
Which DARE worked for me when I was in high school because I was like deathly afraid of drugs. Like we would have those DARE, I don't even know what DARE
The
stands
DARE
for.
program, yeah.
The DARE program would teach you like, don't do drugs, kids. Like this is what happens if you get addicted
Right.
and all that kind of. And I remember when I was like in middle school, I was like, okay, yeah, don't touch drugs. Like I was such a goody two shoes. But don't they do that in schools still? So why do you think they still have these drug issues or nicotine issues happening?
Well, I mean, just this past week was Red Ribbon Week. And during that week, we talk about like, say no to drugs, don't do drugs. But I don't recall having some sort of program, like having to implement some sort of program at school. They just tell the teachers, it's Red Ribbon Week, teach your kids not to do drugs. And we're like, okay, cool. I mean, we know a basic amount of information to tell the kids, like no meth, no like coke, no heroin.
But there's no like active curriculum for like how to teach it. Is it all just kind of freestyle?
Well, not in elementary, I would say. I mean, it's like,
Well, it doesn't happen in elementary, I would imagine, but even middle schoolers and high schoolers are doing it, I guess. So.
yeah, but I remember when I was doing the DARE program as a elementary kid, we were taught some sort of like curriculum about drugs. That's what I recall.
There were like those t-shirts and stuff.
Right, but apparently something was wrong about the program. I forgot exactly what happened, but they stopped it because there was actually some sort of like detrimental effects to it, which is why they stopped it.
You're talking about the DARE program?
Yeah, the DARE program. But I'm not sure if that's why we resorted to now like Red Ribbon Week, but I know that there's no DARE program anymore. When I taught middle school too, I was not given a program to tell the kids like exactly the curriculum of like why drugs are bad, whatever, this is, you know, harmful to your body. But I had to go out and kind of tell the kids like, this is wrong, this is what happens, these are the harmful effects of drugs.
So apparently in January of 2024, the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, authorized the marketing of Zins, right? And it was intended for adults 21 and older. But with that also came the increase in Zin, or in the usage of Zin from high school students and also middle school students, right? And the Keck School of Medicine of USC actually found that there was a significant increase of these students using Zins.
You're right.
Do you think that, I mean, was this normal in high school when you were in high school?
But you know what? The thing is, the difference between when we were kids and now is that when the FDA came with this approval, they approved the usage of different flavors in Zin and in e-cigarettes. Imagine if we didn't have all of these different flavors, like mint flavor, watermelon, mango, and it's just tobacco.
Yeah,
the
that's
kids
gross.
would not want that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's gross, right?
Yeah.
Like who would want to put chewing tobacco all over your mouth for a little bit of a buzz when it tastes like crap,
Yeah,
right?
that's actually true. I think that these especially e-cigarettes. Like when e-cigarettes became like mainstream, having all of these flavors made it so easy to get addicted because it became like a little trend. It'd be like, oh my God, this new flavor came out. Like I have to go try it. Or like,
Right.
this is my new favorite brand, or like all these different brands. And it's so accessible.
Yeah.
Like you just show up and you just pick it up and you're good. I don't know. It's just too easy to get addicted
Right.
nowadays.
It's kind of like with alcohol. Now that we have Smirnoff and Buzz Balls, right? They
Yeah.
have like different flavors and it
Party
tastes like
packs.
juice, right?
Yeah.
And when like teenagers drink this, they're like, wait, this is not alcohol. This
Yeah.
is just juice. But then they drink like 5 of them in a row and they end up getting alcohol poisoning.
Do you think that these statistics are true? Like the students that are using e-cigarettes and tobacco, like is that something you see in the school setting when you used to teach in middle school? Or
I've never personally seen the pouches, but I have seen a lot of vaping and a lot of weed pens.
okay.
Those are very popular in like teenagers, and especially because it's so hard to conceal. The trend that's happening with the pouches is now you don't have vapor
Oh,
coming
yeah.
out, right?
So
And
that's
so
more
you can,
concealable.
right, and you can hide it inside the classrooms now because before you would hit it and you would have to hide the smoke, and now you just put it in your mouth. It's really hard to find it now
Yeah.
with vaping and with nicotine pouches too.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, it hooks the brain. Like, nicotine is so highly addictive. And especially with teenage brains, like they're still growing. They're still growing until I think you're like 18 or like 21 years old, right? And during that time, it's so crucial for you to have to develop the brain appropriately. But when you have nicotine, like it grabs your attention and it really affects the learning. It affects your mood because you get cranky if you don't have it.
Yeah.
And it
Withdrawals.
affects, yeah, withdrawals. And it also affects your self control. Because I remember, like, when I would see people who are addicted to nicotine, they can't go like 5 minutes without taking a hit.
It's
And if you,
also expensive.
yeah, yeah, it's expensive. It drains your pocket, it drains your energy, and you get hooked onto it. You really can't study and be in a classroom for an hour without having that affect some sort of like attention of yours.
Yeah, if you guys are watching this, don't do drugs and don't do nicotine. Also, if you guys are a teacher watching this, please let us know what your experience has been because I have not seen students in high school or middle school use these products, but it must be happening because we're seeing it in these articles and in the statistics. So if you guys have seen this, please let us know because we'd love to see more.
Apparently, it looks like mint gum, kind of like when you open it up, it's like a little Altoid mint. But if it's like a little pouch, we'll put an image on the screen. If it looks like a little pouch with some powder in it, then it could be nicotine
Pouches.
pouches.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout. I remember when we started doing a vaping, they would conceal it and make it look like highlighters. Do you remember that? And they would trick the teachers and say, no, this is a highlighter or a USB.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? Yeah, but it would be a vape.
Yeah, kids are getting tricky nowadays. I understand because I'm sure everyone has gone through a phase where they've tried nicotine or where they've tried alcohol. And I think it's so sad because it's just too early. And I think a lot of these students, they get hooked into it because they have older siblings. That's what I've found is the #1 use. Actually, there's probably 2 major uses. One, I think, is when you have older siblings. And then 2 is when you have maybe some form of family abuse or neglect, right?
Yeah.
So when your family isn't around, you hang out with kids who do that kind of stuff and you find an escape, right?
Right.
So
Well, in my case, when I caught a lot of my middle schoolers having these weed pens and vapes, it was actually the parents that they would
Interesting.
take. Yeah, it wasn't the siblings. It wasn't because of abuse at home. It was literally the parents would smoke weed with my student. And I would confiscate the weed pen. I would say, hey, you're not supposed to have this at school. I would confiscate it and I would call the parents, hey, so-and-so had a weed pen. We confiscated it. You're gonna have to like pick it up from the office because you're not supposed to have this at school. And word for word, the mom would reply, oh my gosh, he took my weed pen again. Is it the green one? Please tell me it's not the green one. I was looking for that everywhere. And she starts yelling at the kid through the phone. And I'm like, what is going on right now? Is this the kind of parenting that we need to, expect from now on?
yeah, I think that's maybe a very severe case. Obviously, has it happened more than once, or is it like a maybe an odd case out? Because
It's an odd case, yeah.
I do believe it, and I'm sure it can happen. But I imagine that this probably happens the most in very specific communities or very specific areas where that kind of activity occurs much more often. I hope it's not occurring more often than that. But
Right. that's the hope.
Yeah. So the next topic we're moving on to is the idea of chronic absenteeism. And this is something that I didn't know until I read this article. So apparently, to start off, chronic absenteeism is defined as students missing 10% or more of school. The US rate of chronic absenteeism reached an all-time high of 31% in the years of 2021 to 2022, and then it decreased to 28% in 2022 to 2023. And it's still going down, but there's still like a very high level of chronic absenteeism that's happening in today's school setting. In the school year of 2022 to 2023, 20 states reported that more than 30% of their students missed at least 3 weeks of school. And it looks like the biggest offenders out of the states is actually Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. California is sitting at 28%. Oh, Alaska too. Alaska is at 43%. Right? So there's a lot of these schools that are seeing high levels of absenteeism, so that's missing 10% or more of the entire school year. Is that something that you've seen happen in the school?
Chronic absenteeism has been an ongoing issue that I've faced every single year of my school.
And that's also crazy because when I was in school, I was deathly afraid of missing school. I don't know about you, but like my parents and my family, they were very, very much tiger parents. And I was so afraid to show up late because you would get a tardy warning, or if you were absent, you'd miss out on so much work. I remember I took it so seriously, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays,
I took it seriously too, but I do relate with these students just because I was sick growing up. I had a lot of chronic illness, and it would be like my asthma, or I had some sort of like lung issue. So because of that illness, I did miss out on a lot of school. But thankfully, my parents were able to catch me up to speed at home because they made sure that I was sitting down. I did my workbooks. I did all my homework, and I wasn't like missing out on a lot of academics. But I know that that's not the case for a lot of parents. And actually, I did some research, and it says that the reasons for absences typically fall into 4 broad categories. The first one is barriers to attendance. Barriers meaning that there's chronic illnesses like how I faced. Maybe they have asthma, maybe they have severe allergies, autoimmune disease, right? And that will prevent you from going to school, obviously. Another one is barriers to transportation. A lot of parents don't have access to transportation. Maybe they live far away from home, or they don't have the car that day. Car responsibilities could be split up into like different members of the family. Maybe they have one car to share. Another could be like they don't have clean uniform. And this is also, it goes hand in hand with especially schools that are Title I and you have low income families. I've seen a lot of families who don't have access to daily usage of laundry. And because of that, they come into school with clothes that haven't been washed for over a week. And it's very apparent. And because of that, like if I were a student, I wouldn't want to come to school in those dirty clothes. So the barriers to having no clean clothes can also result to that. And another barrier could be they need to stay behind because they need to care for their sibling. And that's where a lot of absenteeism happens in high schoolers as well. One way we can attack these barriers is as teachers, we want to provide extra snacks at home or at school because if people don't have enough food at home, then they come to school and you should have extra snacks for them. You can have spare clothes. You can have extra supplies so that all of their needs are already at the school. And as long as they can find ways to come to school, they would have everything they need at the classroom.
it looks like the statistics of chronic absenteeism, it peaked after COVID, right? Because the levels were fairly low, or they were lower before COVID happened, but after COVID happened, it peaked at like 30%, right? So why do you think it was so high after COVID? It's obviously going down now, but like what do you think maybe sparked that statistic?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors I think that goes with why it's been affected after COVID. It could be economical issues. It could be just a shift in perspective towards school. It could be maybe parents realize they like it when their kids are out. They don't want to take them to school. I've had a student who didn't come to school for a whole week because the mom had jury duty, I believe, or some sort of court thing. And she wanted her kid to go to school with her because she needed her student or her kid to translate. And, there's different ways you can find a translator, especially in the courtroom. But she didn't want to go by herself. So she asked one of her kids.
That's actually interesting because one of the statistics in this article, it said that English learning students were 20% more likely to exhibit behaviors of chronic absenteeism, and it sounds like that's true.
I believe that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that for sure. Comparing my EL students with my non-EL students, there's way more absenteeism with ELs for sure.
And it's probably because they're helping their parents, right?
Right. I think it's also the culture
Sure.
in maybe I want to say like Asian culture and Hispanic culture. These are usually the ones who are EL, right? Family cultures that they bring has a lot to do with like helping out in the family, having responsibilities with the family, taking care of siblings, supporting your parents, and they put family over like above anything else. So maybe that goes with why they're missing out on school and they have more other like family responsibilities outside of school. The second one is aversion. Aversion meaning that they don't come to school because they don't want to come to school for various reasons. They could be getting bullied at school. Maybe they're just scoring very low and they don't have that kind of engagement with math or ELA. They don't like their teachers. It could have like maybe they have a test that day and they have a lot of test anxiety, so they ditch, right? Or it could be social drama. There's some sort of like fight within like friends. There's a lot of aspects in school that, growing up, especially like imagine you as a middle schooler. Imagine all of the, like, do you remember all of the drama that you had to go through as middle
It
school?
was so stupid.
Yeah, I would if I had,
While you're going through puberty.
right, if I could, I would just not go to school that day, right? And just not face the bullies, not face the friends I was arguing with, not take that test. Like kids avoid places that make them feel bad.
Yeah, I think that's why teachers have such a huge job to try to make a space in the classroom where kids and students enjoy going there, right? So,
Right, like having a safe learning environment, helping the kids enjoy school.
yeah.
And also like making sure to address any kind of bullying that might be happening, making sure you get like counselors on board, fear of going to school or anxiety, or maybe they're going through depression too, right? Just helping the kids go through that kind of process.
Yeah, that's so important.
Right. It's also disengagement. So disengagement is when instructions just feel like busy work and they don't want to learn because they're bored. Kids will often run away. You don't want to go to a conference if you know it's going to be boring, right? So maybe that's why some kids don't want to go to school. And then if I was a kid, I would fake a tummy ache because I wouldn't want to go to school. So disengagement is also high up there.
Yeah.
And the last one is misconceptions and norms. When parents or students have some sort of misconception about school. So things like, oh, one day doesn't matter. Missing out on 2 days doesn't matter. It's his birthday, so I'm going to take him to Disneyland, and that shouldn't really matter because it's just one day.
It starts with one day and then it sort of snowballs into multiple days. And
Right. Or like if my kid is absent, but it's excused, so it doesn't count. Or they can say, kindergarten, it's not serious, so I can like take them out of school.
Yeah.
Right, and I actually looked into why admin pushes attendance so hard too. So apparently for admin, chronic absenteeism is when kids fall behind at least 10% of the school days, right? So if you're thinking like if there's 180 school days in one school year, if you miss 10% of it, that's 18 days. That's like a whole unit right there. Kids who miss that 10%, they really fall behind academically. And they tend to be the ones who start struggling with reading and math. And these are the kids who miss a lot of credits, who are more likely to not graduate at school. And so attendance is a early warning sign for kids who will more likely fall behind. Another reason is accountability score. So chronic absenteeism is built into the state's report card. So attendance directly affects school rating and interventions. And that also is affected into school funding as well. Because in California, for example, funding follows something called ADA, average daily attendance, which means that if there's empty seats and less students going to school, there's fewer funding for that school, which means that there's tougher choices with staffing, class sizes, programs. And it's interesting because California is one of the small handful of states who uses ADA. I know that like Texas also uses it, Mississippi uses it, Idaho. And it's not, the opposite of ADA would be to have enrollment. So they use the entire enrollment and they fund schools that way. Whereas in California, it's really important for the kids to come in every day because their funding is based off of that. Admin enforces attendance because it's also the law. You are legally obligated to mark who came to school. You need to track attendance. If a student misses a lot of schools, then admin has to contact home. They need to document what interventions they've tried, and they need to document the next steps they've given to these parents as well.
It's legally required by federal law, probably state law, even local laws, right, to do all of that kind of stuff. And it's probably for auditing purposes, right, or for accountability to make sure that schools aren't, just lying about their statistics.
Right. And some schools I've seen, they actually hire truancy officers. So truancy officers are hired so that they would literally go to students' homes, kind of like a welfare check. And they would knock on the door and just make sure, are you guys good? Like, we haven't seen you in over a week. Is there anything that we can do to help you? Because, there's been extreme cases where they go to these students' homes and they find out that student has been neglected or have been abused. And so we don't want to have that, especially if there's a previous record of some sort of case like that.
So going on to the next topic, there's an article that says, new California law aims to improve school nutrition by phasing out some ultra-processed foods. Defining ultra-processed foods has always been tricky because there's not like a really great way to categorize it. But a lot of times researchers will describe ultra-processed foods as types of products that contain industrially made ingredients that you cannot find at home. I read that as like, if I'm reading the nutrition label and it's something I can't pronounce and it's not something I have in my kitchen, then it's probably processed in some way, right? So it's not fresh foods, like, things that were made on site in a kitchen. It's things that were processed and packaged and then reheated, right?
Or if the nutrition list is like insanely long.
Exactly. I guess in your school lunches, have you noticed more processed foods or have you noticed more fresh foods?
Well, this school year, we actually changed the school lunches where everything is freshly made on campus. So that's really great for our school, but I know
Even
that's
the pizza?
Pizza they do to go. But I know that's not the case for like many other schools. I also remember in high school, they have chips, soda, candy. Like they have vending machines over there too.
Uncrustables.
Right. I personally like taking out the ultra processed food idea. It'll help promote a healthier lifestyle to kids. My concern is that the kids won't like the taste of it just because a lot of kids at home eat processed food. They're gonna come to school and they're not gonna like the flavor. They're gonna be like, ew, it's broccoli. And they're not gonna like it. But you know what? If they're hungry, they'll still eat it, right?
Yeah, that's something you can't really avoid, right? I think nutrition and taking care of yourself and eating healthy food starts from home, and that's not something you can always control. But I think that if you have access to it at school, that's at least half of their day or a part of their day where they can get access to those kinds of healthy foods, right?
Right. And I think that food is fuel, right? It's so important to have simple, healthy ingredients when it comes to food. And I think that students really need that extra energy and fuel for the entire duration of a school day and also focus for classes. A personal experience of mine is I had two different diets that I've tried before. I tried the keto diet and I tried the carnivore diet. And for both diets, you completely take away sugar. And I went months without no sugar in my diet. And I can remember how much better clarity, like mental clarity and focus and energy, just sustained energy I had throughout the day. So I can kind of see like how much of a benefit this would be for students if you just take away a lot of that junk and chemicals and toxin from their diet as well.
And I bet teachers probably see this, right? So we talk about like sugar crashes. So we just had Halloween, right? So like when students come by and eat a whole bunch of candy and eat a whole bunch of chocolate, do you see sugar crashes? Do you see students getting super happy and super excited and full of energy, and then afterwards they're just, that's probably a result of the sugar, right? Or processed foods.
That happens to us too.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I go out to eat Chipotle for lunch, I will crash in the afternoon.
Yeah.
If compared to like if I meal prep chicken and rice, right? Yeah.
Also related to the note of school meals. So apparently For more than 2 school years during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, schools were able to offer meals to all students at no charge through the pandemic-related child nutrition waivers offered by the US Department of Agriculture. So, and then after the pandemic, after post-pandemic, several states decided that they did not want to return back to the pre-pandemic school meal operations, which required having to get free or reduced prices, paid meal categories, or doing all of the work to basically categorize each student. And a lot of these states introduced legislation to permanently provide free school meals for all students, right? So currently, there's 8 states: California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Mexico, and Vermont. There's currently 8 states that have passed policies to make school meals available to all students at no charge, right? Do you think that's a good idea? Have you seen this happen as a teacher in California? Have you seen that all students are getting meals for free now as a result of, first the COVID pandemic, but then even after that, it was continued free meals, right?
Right. And I really like this idea. I know for a fact for my school, because we are Title One, everyone gets free meals regardless. Regardless, yeah. And I think that's amazing. Honestly, when I grew up, I didn't like the whole stigma of, I'm getting lunch with my friend. My friend can afford her lunch. But then when it's my turn, the lunch lady would be like, are you free or reduced? And I'm like, yeah. Right? And it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
It's
That
really
happened to me too, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a whole stigma, and everyone's like, "Oh, you don't have money," right?
Like introducing socioeconomic class or
Yeah.
socioeconomic class literally at high school or middle school level, right? And people start to treat you differently because of your social or economic status, right? And it's like, it's so subtle, but it's like, it's every day, right? Because every day you're getting lunch and you're
Right.
in line with these kids who either have to pay full or pay reduced or get it for free. And you just know,
Right.
right?
And I think that if public schools are mandatory for students to attend, then the food should be free as well. And
I think it becomes a matter of who pays for it then, right? But I
Right.
do think that if you did it correctly and you appropriated the budget for it, like it could be a good thing, right?
Yeah, and when the meals are universal and when they're streamlined in a way where like it's just everybody free for all, then kids can focus more on their academic.
Yeah.
Fewer people are hungry, fewer kids are tantruming because they're hungry. And especially with like kindergarten and teenagers, they are hungry all the time. They eat a lot.
Yeah.
And if you just have food available at schools, it helps so much. Because if I can just sit right here and then just study for 8 hours, I need to get up and get a snack, right? And imagine how you are as a child too. You need to have food. You need to have nutrition throughout the day.
I've actually learned that mental energy or mental work requires way more energy in some cases than physical effort, right? So like a lot of times, obviously you're hungry after you run a marathon or after you work out and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes I will just sit and just write an essay or do a test, and afterwards I'm like exhausted.
And hungry.
And hungry
Yeah.
because like you spent all of this mental energy trying to finish like, whatever task you're doing, and you're just exhausted.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same with, I always relate this to dogs. A lot of times people are like, I can't tire my dog out. He will just run and run and run. A lot of people recommend give him a mental puzzle. Like make him get frustrated, make him try to open this puzzle where it has, kibble inside or something like that. And after they do that for 2 hours, they're dead.
It's
Like
called-
they're so tired.
Right, it's called like a mental stimulation. Yeah.
And I think it's the same with students, right? When you give them a lot of mental stimulation, when you give them opportunities to problem solve, they're trying to, solve a problem they've never done before. They have to remember and like really try. It exhausts them. Like they get
Right.
tired.
Right.
So for our last topic of today, we're going to go on to cell phones. So apparently Wisconsin becomes the 36th state in the US to limit cell phones in schools. The push to limit cell phone use has been rapid. Florida was the first state to pass such a law in 2023. Out of the 36 states that restrict cell phones in school, phones are banned throughout the school day in 18 states and the District of Columbia. So under the Wisconsin bill, all public schools are required to adopt a policy prohibiting the use of cell phones during instructional time. There would be exceptions for use during an emergency or perceived threat to manage a student's healthcare, or if the phone is allowed under the student's individualized education program or an IEP, or if written by a teacher for educational purposes. Do you think that banning phones or maybe even restricting the use of phones in schools is a good thing or a bad?
A personal take to how we see this is whenever you really need to focus on something, what do you do with your phone?
You put it away.
You put it away.
Yeah.
And you don't just put it away right next to you. You literally go and put it in the next room and you leave it there because just having that proximity of your phone gets you distracted. And it's so hard for you to focus on something if that phone is right there. So a lot of schools are already implementing some sort of version of this. What the law does is it just standardizes it. So if you have a policy throughout the whole district, you don't have like oh, well, this teacher allows phones, but this teacher doesn't allow phones, right? And the students start to get very upset, and they have like this sense of like injustice and unstructured modality of like what we expect, right? And if you have the entire school or the entire district says no phones allowed at all, period, kids will learn to adapt that. Kids, you can start, they will start complaining a little bit and bickering, whatever, but eventually they learn that that's an expectation. And what we can also do is we teach this routine really quickly and really efficiently in this beginning of the school year. And we can also incentivize the usage of phone. For example, when the period is over, usually what teachers do is they do an exit ticket. And the faster and the more, if you complete the exit ticket quickly and you get a good score on it and you show your understanding of the topic of that day, you get your phone back, right? But if you take your time, or if you don't answer it because you weren't paying attention in school, or you were just talking with your friends and you were just, messing around the whole day, you don't complete the exit ticket, you don't get your phone till the end of the school day.
Does your school currently do this? And how strict is it, I guess? Do they actually physically take the phone, or do they just say no phones out? And like if I see a phone, then I'm taking it, or do they have to hand it when they come into school?
So what most schools do is they have a phone hotel or a phone jail. We don't like to say jail because, you want to make it like not a negative connotation, right? It's just something that you put your phone in. So it can be like a hanging shoe organizer where everything is labeled and you just put your phone inside that sleeve with your number on it. Yeah, you can turn off your phone or you can just put it on silent, but it just needs to be away from you. So it's still there, so the kids still have that feeling of security because they can still see the phone, but it's just not in arm's reach.
It's crazy to me that, it said that Florida was the first state to implement this policy in 2023. That is so recent, right? I thought I remember when I was in school, they had restrictions. Maybe it wasn't standardized, right? They just maybe asked us to not have our phones. But now that they're standardizing it, it seems like it's becoming an actual more of a nationwide issue. And I bet you could actually record or audit the positive or negative benefits of this by looking at if test scores increase.
Right.
Right?
No, they actually did a recent survey with principals, and the principals were showing that the removal of cell phones had a big perceived win. They showed a better climate, around like 70% or higher better climate. They also showed around like more than 50% of less inappropriate recordings in the classroom, and also around 50% of less cyberbullying. And
those are huge.
Right. And these are huge things. I also saw a podcast the other day where a psychologist did a study, and she showed that if you remove the phone in the classrooms, it is significantly better when it comes to focus and attention with students.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids nowadays, they can't sit still. They can't just be bored, right? And I think that's actually a very useful skill now that everybody has a phone, right? Just being able to sit in the doctor's office or on a train or waiting for a bus, just being bored, right? Like that's just life, right? You can't always have entertainment in the palm of your hand. So
right. And if you need to use, because I know some people will say, well, what about if you use the phone in a educational way or to enhance your learning experience? I say there's different ways for you to use technology in the classroom without using a phone. You can have a Chromebook, there's classroom tablets, there's classroom computers as well. Anything that will just get rid of like the other noise, right, from your phone. There's like social media, there's texting other friends.
it's really hard to monitor it, right? Once you allow the phone, because you say you can use it for, studying or use it for educational research, that might be great, but it's really hard to monitor if they're using it for anything else related to education, right?
Right. And I remember when I taught virtual school, everyone had to get Chromebooks because they had to go on Zoom. And we had this program as teachers where we can look at what everyone's screen looks like. And if I were to just let it go, they would be on YouTube, they would be playing games, they would find whatever else they can do with that tablet or Chromebook and not do whatever the task is on hand. So monitoring, yes, it's very, very difficult to do, especially when you have that many in the classroom.
All right, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you guys for tuning in into the Teacher's Wish podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.